Let's take a journey deep into the jungle. Picture this. The air is heavy with humidity, and the trees stretch their arms towards the sky like ancient guardians. The ground beneath is a web of tangled roots and soft moss. You hear the usual sounds: chirping birds, rustling leaves, and the occasional distant roar. It's chaotic, yet somehow, it feels like there's a pattern to it all. A rhythm. But what if I told you that this is only the surface of a world far more complex than we've ever imagined? Animals, as we know, communicate. But not just in the simple ways we're used to thinking, not just with chirps, howls, or growls. There are whispers in this jungle, silent conversations happening right under our noses. It's a language of the unseen and unheard, and today, we're diving headfirst into that mystery. Now, we all know how dogs wag their tails or how cats purr, right? That's easy enough to understand. But what about the more hidden signals? Scientists have long been scratching their heads over some of the ways animals seem to talk, without sound or even gestures. For instance, did you know that elephants can communicate through the ground? Yeah, you heard that right, through the ground. Elephants produce low-frequency rumbles, so deep that our ears can't catch them. These vibrations travel through the earth, and other elephants, miles away, can pick up these seismic signals through their feet. It's like a secret elephant telegraph system. How they decipher these vibrations? Well, that's still a bit of a head-scratcher. You see, the pads of their feet are incredibly sensitive, packed with receptors that detect the slightest tremors. But here's the real mystery. They don't just sense movement, they understand meaning. A distant rumble might signal danger, like the approach of lions, or simply the arrival of a neighboring herd. Somehow, elephants can decode the words hidden in these vibrations. Now, let's shift our gaze to the treetops where the birds reside. We've all enjoyed the melodious song of a bird at some point. But did you know that birds might actually be gossiping? No kidding. Researchers studying the chestnut-crowned babbler in Australia discovered that these birds have specific calls that string together in different combinations to convey different messages. It's a bit like Morse code. These birds create distinct sequences to mean different things, like whether it's time to feed the chicks or to sound the alarm for an approaching predator. What's mind-blowing is that these calls aren't just random noises. Each element in their song has meaning depending on its place in the sequence, kind of like the way we form sentences with words. And get this, they even seem to use a type of syntax. That's a fancy way of saying they structure their sounds in a particular order to convey different meanings. It's not quite a spoken language like ours, but it's eerily close. Now, if tiny birds can do this, imagine what else could be going on in the jungle that we still haven't uncovered. Alright, we've tackled vibrations and sound. But let's step into another level of animal communication, one that involves light we can't even see. Let's talk about ultraviolet and infrared. Many insects, birds, and some reptiles can see ultraviolet, UV, light. To them, flowers don't just look colorful, they glow with UV patterns that guide them to the nectar like landing strips at an airport. But this UV vision isn't just for finding food. Birds, like the European starling, use UV to recognize mates or rivals based on the unique way their feathers reflect ultraviolet light. It's like a whole other dimension of color-coded conversation. And then, we have snakes, the masters of infrared communication. Snakes like pit vipers have heat-sensing pits on their faces that can detect the faintest warmth given off by other animals. They can see the heat signature of their prey in the dark. But here's where it gets really wild. Some researchers believe that snakes might even use their infrared sensing to communicate during the mating season, where body heat patterns reveal a snake's reproductive status. But wait, the jungle's secrets don't stop there. We can't forget about smell, arguably the oldest, most universal form of communication in the animal kingdom. Many animals release chemicals called pheromones that carry messages. And no, we're not just talking about skunks here. Take ants, for example. These tiny warriors of the jungle navigate their complex social structures almost entirely through scent. When an ant finds food, it leaves a trail of pheromones for others to follow. But they don't just drop generic markers. Ants can change the chemical composition of their pheromones to convey different messages, like whether the food is plentiful, if there's danger ahead, or if they need reinforcements to carry a particularly large find. Now, imagine trying to eavesdrop on these chemical conversations. For a long time, we didn't even know how to begin. We can't see or hear these signals, and they're often too subtle for our technology to pick up. But scientists are starting to decode these scents, unraveling the complex social dynamics of these insect empires. And let's be honest, the more we learn, the more it feels like ants are running little societies down there. Speaking of subtlety, how about something on a much grander scale? The oceans are like the jungles of the sea, filled with mysteries that boggle the mind. Whales, particularly humpback whales, are famous for their haunting songs that can travel for miles underwater. But here's the kicker: we're not entirely sure what these songs mean. We know that male humpbacks sing elaborate songs, especially during the breeding season. But they don't just sing randomly. They repeat complex patterns and even remix their tunes as the season progresses. Some scientists think these songs could be a form of mating call, while others believe they could serve to establish territory or signal identity. The truth is, no one has cracked the code yet. It's like listening to a beautiful symphony without understanding the lyrics. And then there's echolocation, the ultimate secret weapon in animal communication. Dolphins and bats use echolocation to navigate and hunt, but there's evidence suggesting they might also use these ultrasonic clicks to talk to each other. Dolphins, for instance, have unique signature whistles, almost like names, that they use to identify themselves and call out to one another. Think about that. Dolphins might be calling each other by name in the vastness of the ocean. We've only scratched the surface here. The jungle, the sea, the sky, all are filled with creatures communicating in ways we barely understand. The more we study, the more it feels like we're piecing together a grand puzzle. But some parts of this puzzle remain frustratingly out of reach. Like, how do migratory birds find their way across continents without getting lost? Some researchers believe they might be using the Earth's magnetic field as a sort of natural GPS, sensing subtle changes in magnetism to navigate. How they do this, and whether they communicate about it amongst themselves, is still largely unknown. Or take bees. They perform a waggle dance to tell hive mates the direction and distance to food. This dance involves an intricate pattern of movements that somehow conveys precise information. How did this behavior develop, and what other secrets do these tiny dancers hold in their communication? We're still figuring it out. Nature is whispering to us all the time, but it's up to us to listen, really listen. Animals have evolved a vast array of communication methods that go beyond the limits of human language. From vibrations in the ground to UV light, from pheromones to whale songs, these are all pieces of an enormous, interconnected conversation. And every discovery we make opens up even more questions. What else are we missing? How many more secrets does the animal kingdom hold in its silent, invisible languages? Perhaps, with patience and a bit of humility, we might start to unravel these mysteries. But one thing's for sure: the whispers of the jungle, and beyond, are far from being fully understood.